I'll just do a quick intro for you, Eric, and let everyone know who you are if they don't already. I can't imagine many people haven't seen your face and heard you talk at some point. So, okay, yeah, well, we only have so much time, so let's get started. So, for those of you that don't know, this is Eric Barstow. He's the founder of Painting Business Pro and co-owner of the National Painting Group. With a portfolio of fast-growing painting companies and thousands of students in his programs, Eric has become a leading voice in scaling and systemizing painting businesses. He focuses on helping contractors grow with intention, structure, and long-term strategy. This session in particular is titled From Salesperson to Sales Leader. And so with that, it's all yours, Eric. Go ahead, and we're excited to hear from you.
Awesome. Boom. Can you guys see what we're looking at here?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. So for anybody, Jaden, thanks for having me. Guys, I'm here to give as much value as I can in the time that we've got together. So that's my aim. I just asked, hey, where are there some gaps in like what was already being presented? Because I could talk about a lot of stuff in the painting business all day long. And they said, hey, how about going from a sales rep to a sales leader, which super important. So quick background. So my name is Eric Barstow. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, born and raised here. Been in the painting business for 20 plus years. I've been coaching for 20 plus years in the painting business. Love my family. That's what it's all about for me. That's why I started a business. I grew up with an entrepreneurial dad around all the time. Great life. Wanted to be able to provide to my family. So I got a 5-year-old daughter, 3-year-old son, and a 3-month-old. And ultimately, like my intention at Painting Business Pro is that people create freedom, which means financial freedom, time freedom, freedom to create your life, freedom to say how you want things to go, discover what's possible. I think you have no idea what you're actually capable of. Let's find out and build a company people love. I think that's the whole point. Like, so many people build a business and then they just want to get out of their business. And I say you should build a business you love. And business is creative and business is art. And you've never heard of an artist who wants to retire. And so if you're thinking about getting out of your business, you're just not an artist yet. And you should build a company that people love, your team loves, your painters love, your subcontractors love, your customers love, you love, your family loves. How do we do that? When we do that, we see a ton of success in the business too. So that's kind of what I do at Painting Business Pro. And in my own companies, I also run National Painting Group, co-own National Painting Group with 12 companies in there. We did over 30 million last year, pacing for about 40 million this year. Our two biggest companies, Foothills and Elkhorn, are both on track for about 10 million this year. So we're in the trenches doing it, building companies and doing awesome things. And then coaching people at Painting Business Pro. Like Jaden said, we have thousands of people I've coached over the years. Hundreds of people have built million-dollar companies that we've worked with. Dozens of people have built multi-million-dollar companies. We do leadership development events. And, when you work with us at Painting Business Pro, you get access to our systems, our playbooks, the training that we use to build our own portfolio companies, and access to me and my leadership team that runs all those companies to coach you. So let's jump into the material here. So why sales leadership matters. I think one of the hardest things to, well, first we'll talk about why sales matters. So I think it's great that PaintScout's doing this for a focus on sales, and hopefully tons and tons of people signed up for it, because sales is like one of the biggest levers that you have in your business. When you can improve your salesmanship, you can spend more money on marketing because you're getting more out of that marketing. So it allows you to spend more money on marketing, which drives more business. So the biggest companies are the ones that can spend the most on marketing. And how you spend more on marketing, one is, you can get better at marketing, but the biggest thing that I see with most people is I'm not good enough at sales to spend enough on marketing. And so if every estimate I do, let's say it takes me 3 estimates to sell a job, I can't spend as much per estimate. But if I can book a job every 2 estimates, I can spend more money per estimate. And so it allows me to spend more on marketing and grow the business. You can command a higher price. I think that people are pretty generally like underpriced, almost universally. It's very, very rare that I work with anybody who is priced properly. You're worth what you need to charge, what you need to charge to run a healthy company, and you're worth that. But if you don't have a good sales process to demonstrate value and demonstrate why you're charging what you're charging, then you can't charge it. And so it's so super important as you build a business that you're making proper profit margins, because it's a lot of work to build a business. It's a lot of risk to build a business. When the business gets really big, you need plenty of room in your margins to protect like the down years and things like that. And it's just a lot of work to build big companies. And so you need to have healthy margins. To have healthy margins, you need healthy prices. And to get healthy prices, you need to be good at demonstrating value to customers, having a professional experience with your customers through the sales process. You can also hire better people, and your marketing costs drop. So if I spend $100,000 on marketing and I generate 800K in sales, my marketing cost is like 12.5%. If I generate $1 million in sales on those same estimates, it's 10%. If I can generate 1.5 million, it's down to like 6.5%. So we also get more and more profitable as we improve sales. So then we go a step further and we say, why do we need to focus on sales leadership? Well, to answer that, I want to talk about why scaling is hard. And essentially, at the beginning, you run the business, and it's pretty, it's relatively easy to run a business when you're the one who answers the phone, does the estimate and manages the project. And I say easy in the sense that like you're the person they're talking to every step of the way. So it's really easy to have a seamless experience for customers. They have a personal relationship. We can get more referrals, more reviews. Like that's kind of an easier thing to do because it's just you've got to worry about. But then you can't run the business forever. At some point, you got to hire other people. So you start training other people, and then eventually they start training other people if you get big enough. And what happens, and I see this happen all the time, is the effectiveness in the business gets diluted. So what I mean by that is, your next salesperson doesn't sell as well as you. Your next project manager doesn't project manage as well as you. Your next salesperson doesn't set expectations as well as you. They don't take as detailed notes as you. So the handoff to the project management part of the business is not as smooth. And so as this effectiveness gets diluted, the bigger the business grows, then marketing costs go up, because instead of, you did all these estimates, you sold $1 million, the next person does the estimates, they only sell 800, our marketing costs go up by 2.5%. And then sales goes down. So we're not just doing $1 million now we're only doing 800. And so not only are we doing less revenue on those estimates, but it's less profitable revenue because the marketing costs. And then the customer experience gets worse because the sales rep is not as good as you. They're not as good at, they don't understand the products as well. They don't understand expectations as well. They don't understand the project management process on the back end as well. And so then the customer experience gets a little worse, not terrible. You can still get 5-star reviews and you can still have the same 4.9 rating on Google that you've always had, but you start to see it in, there's not as many people referring, repeat business goes down a little bit. And the bigger it gets and the more these things happen. So I see as the bigger the business gets, the less effective it all gets. And then the more money you need to spend on marketing just to keep it growing. But the bigger it gets, the more you need to spend on money on marketing. And it's just this really tough cycle you start to get into with trying to scale. It's all about effectiveness. All right. And then also when you don't train people as well, you have more problems that happen in the business. So this is why it's hard. And these are all the things that happen when you work on scaling and you start, and everything we're going to talk about today can apply to anyone that you're hiring. It's not just sales. We'll take the sales angle at it today, but you got to get really good at scaling people and effectiveness. And so the key here is we want to have a really effective and systematic way for training and building the team. So I'm going to go through just like 4 Ds. All right. So there's so much I could talk about. I'm not going to be able to get to everything. Who you recruit, how you recruit, and how you hire is huge in terms of your ability to scale. We're not going to touch on that at all. There's a lot we could talk about with culture and values and alignment within the organization. We're not going to be able to get into that. So we're going to get into a very small piece. And so my intention, just given the time constraint today, is to give you some of the biggest mistakes that I see people make. So I'm going to be aiming for like the principles, like the 80-20. Like this is what people mess up the most in each of the 4 Ds. And the 4 Ds is just one sliver of really building your organization. And then, hopefully by the end, I don't think we'll spend a lot of time on this. This is for you to take away, is you've got clear next steps on how to move forward. Like where can you elevate your leadership and developing your people? And everything that I teach here and anywhere is with one goal in mind, which is that you create freedom, discover what's possible, and build a company people love. And to do that, I believe you need to go build a $2 to $3 million business because that's when it's a big enough business where you've got a team and you can pay them well because the business is big enough and successful enough to pay good people good money. That's really when you have freedom of time. And so uh, what we're talking about is like there's a lot of ways to grow and scale. Everything I'm talking about is how do you grow and scale a company in a very healthy way that's very profitable with very successful team members who love working there. You can grind this out a lot of different ways, but if that's what your aim is, I want a successful company with successful people who love what they do, and we're building a company people love, then and it's very profitable. That's what this is about. All right, so that's where I'm speaking from. Um, is what I think it takes to do that. So let's look at the 4Ds. So the first thing is doing. And so we got do, and then document, demonstrate, and develop. All right, so we're going to go through these four. So the first thing is the doing. So the big before you hire any other salesperson to come in and do sales, you're the one doing sales. And you're the first person to do fill in the blank role in your business. And well, in this talk, we're talking about sales. And the biggest mistake that everybody makes here is not doing this role well enough themselves first. So, although we're not going to get into recruiting, like who you hire into your business is critical. And your greatest limitation, one of the greatest limitations on who you can hire is how much you can compensate people. And how much you can compensate people depends in some ways on what you can predict their results will be. So if you only know how to sell $800,000 in a year as a full-time salesperson, now obviously you're not full-time sales, you're maybe part-time sales. So you do sales 20 hours a week and you can sell 400K. Like, all right, if that's the best you can do 20 hours a week, then you really only, someone full-time can only do 800. So you can't really offer much. Because percentage wise, we need to be like 6 or 7% paid to sales reps. And we can pay them a higher percentage when their sales rates are way higher. But just for our purposes, let's say it's 6 to 7% to a sales commission to make sure we're managing our margins. 7% to a sales rep doing 800K a year is only 56,000 bucks. On the other hand, if you've become really highly effective in sales, so like at our company, we have sales reps that sell a couple $1,000,000 a year, and our top rep will make $190,000 this year, $180,000 this year. And so we can offer more to people. And so the big mistake people make is just not doing the role well enough themselves first. All right. You can't attract good people because you can't offer enough without taking a huge risk. You can't train people effectively because you haven't even mastered the thing. And you can't hold people accountable to high performance because you haven't done the high performance. If I've only ever sold, if my typical week is selling $20,000 on a full-time schedule, I'm kind of full of, I don't have any power in holding other people accountable to selling $30,000 or $40,000 a week. My business partner, Hunter, who runs Elkhorn Painting, like he's a great example of this, but his business really took off when he finally just went all in on doing production himself for a while. And he just ran circles around his whole project management team. He produced more work. He did it more profitably. He got more reviews, more referrals, and he did it in less time. And once he did that for 6 months, he could just hold a higher standard for his team. And what happened is all the performance just went up. And so one of the greatest mistakes is people just don't master the fundamentals in their business first. And so then all these things happen. You can't attract good people. You can't train them. You can't hold them accountable. And again, this makes a huge difference at scale. The 40% sales rate versus 50% sales rate is significant at scale. That's the difference between doing 800,000 on the same number of estimates and $1 million, which is, gross profit and take marketing out, whatever. It's like 80 grand in profit. But at 2 million versus 2.5 million, we're talking about a couple $100,000 in profit. It pays huge dividends to get really, really good at the fundamental functions in your business first. So the benchmark I would say for this is you've got to be selling 50% of your jobs minimum at a 50% profit margin yourself before you're hiring other people. But the goal should be 70%. Especially if you're an owner. Like if you're the owner of the business, you should be aiming like I'm closing 70% of my bids, and I'm not talking about referrals. You should close all of those. I'm talking about Facebook ads and Google leads and lead service leads and stuff you get from flyers and lawn signs and like the cold leads, like just the big marketing mix. You should close 70%, but you should absolutely not start to scale until you can close at least 50%. If you're not there yet, then you got to double down on improving your own sales before you hire it out, is my suggestion. Otherwise, you start creating bad habits in the business. And one of the hardest things for us over the years is we didn't do this the right way. We did it the wrong way. And we had like low standards. And so the thing that's most been in our way with our growth is that new people come in and they're like, okay, that's what everybody else is doing. That's the expectation. It doesn't matter what you say the expectation is. They just see what everyone else is doing, and that's now the expectation. So if they come in and you're the owner and you sell 40% of your estimates, then they think they're doing pretty good at 30%. But if they come in and you're selling 70% and they're doing 30, they feel like, dude, this isn't good enough. And so you've got to set the tone for performance. This is also super important because as we get into step 2, which is documenting everything, your job before you hire people is you've got to document the process. You got to document 100% of what you do to get the results you get. And this documentation process needs to be like very thorough and very complete. So it should really include everything. And the way that can be daunting. And so let me give you an idea, just a suggestion here. So we want to document, we want to simplify what we do. And so if you're an experienced painting contractor and you've got like years and years of experience, and you're passionate about what you do and you've done sales, like you have a lot you could say. You have a lot to talk about. But it doesn't necessarily benefit you to put all of that in the sales training because it's just too much material. And so we want to strip it down to like, what are the fundamentals? So I can get a sales rep to a 50% sales rate with 5 SOPs. There's just 5 things in our sales process that they need to do really, really well. And if they do those 5 things really, really well, they'll close 50%. And then we've got another 10 that is like, if they get those down, then they can get to 60. All right. So this is not, when we say like everything, it's you do want to get everything, but then boil it down to like the most fundamental pieces of your sales process. It's not about making a 200-page thing with all of the knowledge you've ever acquired. Okay, so that's the first thing. All right, everything needs to be written and easily accessible. And then I would break it into levels. So I said, hey, here's the fundamentals. These are the 5 things. We just do those first. Once they got those down, then we go into like, all right, level 2, let's get into that. And I would suggest for all roles that one of the SOPs you have is like a weekly calendar. So what do you do week to week? What do you do day to day? What do you do throughout the day? And how do you manage your week? Because that's really what everybody's performance gets anchored in. So I would suggest including that. And the goal of your documentation is that I can mimic you, what you do every week, what you do every day, and what you do at any individual estimate. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but you want to get as close to 100% as you can and then slowly build and add to your SOPs. But you got to be careful that you don't add so much nuance that it distracts from the fundamentals. So the way that we build this is I'll just send this to you if you want to hit me up. Just put email me here and PaintScout X and I'll send it to you. But we have like a master competency model we use, master playbook for our whole organization. So there's like a sales rep tab. And on that tab across the top, it's got the SOP title, the link to the SOP, the video link. And then we've got a bunch of check boxes for training. Like, did I train them in classroom? Did I train them in field? Have I shadowed them? What do I rate their performance on that SOP? And then notes for like, what are we improving on that SOP? And so this is how we have a master one of these, and then we make copies of it for every new hire. And this is how we manage training people, which I'll get to in a minute. I want to comment on one more thing with this documentation. I'll talk about it here, actually. And by the way, so far, guys, big first thing is you got to get really, really good at the thing first. Second thing is you've got to document. I'm going to back up the importance of the documentation in this next section, which is you've got to demonstrate to people how it's done. All right. So we've hired somebody. All right. And once we hire someone, the very first thing we're going to do is take them through like a classroom style training. All right. We're going to like Literally, I used to do it here in my office on a whiteboard for a day, and we would just go through every single SOP, and I would train them, and we'd engage in it. And one of the rules is you only talk about what's written in the SOP. If you start teaching people things that aren't in the playbook, it teaches them that the playbook isn't really the playbook. It's just some of the playbook. And so that's why it's important that these playbooks are thorough, because your job when you're training people is like you teach the playbook and nothing more. And so you got to bite your tongue here, because you want to simplify. Your people, your new people are not going to catch everything. There's a lot there, and so you've got to only teach from the playbook, nothing more. So we do that in a classroom first. So they just get introduced to all the material. And then we go and we train them in field. So in field training is where now I'm going to demonstrate to this new person every single one of those SOPs. Obviously, estimating is included in here for interior, for exterior. I need to make sure like I've trained them on estimating every different substrate and type of project that we do. And so that's it, right? So that's how we get people through like training is classroom training, in-field training. And on this, we're just checking off every box. Like, okay, did I train them on this SOP in the classroom? Did I train them in field? Yes. And then once we start developing people, we're going to start shadowing them and rating them and then taking notes to improve their performance. So the biggest mistakes that people make in this training session or this training part of onboarding is fundamentally it's under training. And so we have like, I just see this almost universally that people have just a massive bias for under training their people, like forgetting how long it took you to learn what you've learned. Like it took a lot. Like it took a lot for me to learn what I learned. And I'll give you a good example. So Daniel Thayer's, I call him a friend. He worked with me at Painting Business Pro for a couple years, and he did this really well. He grew his company really fast. He grew from 1.7 million to 4 million, while also but quadrupled his profit from 200K to 800K in 1 year. And one of the things he did really, really well is he brought on a couple team members that just absolutely kicked ass. And I did a podcast with him, and we talk about this because I was like, all right, Daniel, my job today is to unpack the things that you do really well that you don't realize you do really well. And so I was like, all right, tell me about your people and how you train them. So for his sales rep, Josh, I dug into it and I'm like, so how do you train him? He's like, oh, we did 80 estimates together. Now, I've done this long enough to know that almost nobody does that much in-field training with someone. And he's like, an in-between estimates, we would just like go down the house, just pricing the front of every single house every time there were breaks. They basically he's like, yeah, we just did estimates together for like 6 weeks, like side by side the whole time. And then we got into his production manager. So what about your production manager? How do you train him? He's like, oh, we spent every waking hour together for 2 months. He rode along with me to every single thing I did in the business for 2 months. And we do something similar with our team. Like our sales reps are going to going with ride-alongs with project managers to learn like the backside. They're going and watching tons of estimates in field. Project managers are going to estimates with them to train them on all the things to look for. We've got like an 8 to 12 week long training period. And this is hard for people because I hire someone and I'm paying them money. I want them to start producing for me. And that rush to like get them just producing, it actually undermines it long term. Like hiring and building your team is the most valuable thing you do because it's creating leverage in your business, but it takes time to build that leverage. And if you shortcut the training, there's a lot of problems with that. Number one, they're not trained well. Number two, they kind of people get frustrated. Like employees get frustrated because they're expected to perform. You expect them to perform. They get commission and want to perform. And when they feel like they didn't get trained well, they resent you. And when that starts to happen, the inevitable outcome is eventually you lose them and you start over. You can't undertrain. Undertraining massively undermines your success with building your team. And then the other biggest mistake I've kind of already pointed to is teaching the secret playbook. So you've got your documented playbook, and then there's the secret playbook. Here's all the other little things that I also do that aren't in the playbook. Don't teach the secret playbook. Teach the basics over and over and over. You just need to know what the basics are that they need to master. And then the third is it's similar, but it's like teaching too much. Don't teach too much. Less is more. This is like drinking from a fire hose, and this is why you got to take your time with training. All right. And then the last piece I'm going to give you here is a definition of trained. So I got this actually from some of my coaches and mentors, and I think it's really good. But how you define someone as trained is they have demonstrated competence under observation. So remember this thing here where I've got every SOP listed. For every single one of those, when I go shadow, I observe my team member doing something. They have demonstrated competence under observation. And competence is sometimes thought of as like not a very high level. Competence is a high level. Like, so most people, if you went out and you watched your sales rep do an estimate, there are parts of that estimate that would make you cringe. Until you can go to an estimate and not feel like you need to jump in because they're doing a bad job, like where you just sit there and like watch and they do an awesome job, that's what being trained means. And very, very few people keep training their people until they get to that level. Like they get them good enough and then stop. And it's costly. All right. So that's how you can define trained is until you can go and watch your person do every single thing on that playbook and observe and be like, dude, I have very little feedback. That was really good. Once you can say that for every one of those playbooks, they're trained. Until then, they're not trained and you need to do more training. All right, so then we get to number 4. So now we say, okay, we've done all the infield training, classroom training, infield training. Now we get into development with a team member, and there's a few principles. So one is like work on one thing at a time. You're just working on the initial call, or you're just working on a pre-close or trial close, or you're just working on the walk around the house, or you're just working on the close, or you're just working on personality selling, or you're just working on filling, like there's all kinds of parts to your playbook that you'll have. You're just working on one thing at a time. All right. And that's hard because at the beginning, they're going to suck at everything and you're going to want to work on everything, but don't. You've just got to work on one thing at a time and sequence those. The second thing is you got to manage your salesperson's mood. Uh, Sales is like an emotional thing. Like when you're doing really well, it's great. You're doing well. When you're not doing well, a lot of salespeople start to get worried and freaked out, and then they start trying to sell. And when you start trying to sell, customers pick up on that. It sounds like it's like commission breath, and sales gets worse. So it's just so important that you're like managing the mood of your sales team. Like that's just one of the most important jobs you have as a sales leader. And then you've also got to let people fail. That's probably not that one's probably a little easier for people. In fact, some people let them fail too much. But there's a balance there between like train, but then there's a point where it's like, all right, I just got to let them go, like fail. And then the fourth principle is like literally never stop training. Even with our most senior people, it's like until someone puts up like 60% sales numbers every single week in and week out, like without fail, we keep working on something because I notice that salespeople perform better when there's something they're working on. All right, so we just never stop training. So the structure for this is really 3 things. There's weekly one-on-one meetings, and then there's infield training, which is mostly going to be you shadowing them, and then there's role playing for sales. So the weekly one-on-one meeting, we're basically going through previous week performance. Did you hit or miss your goal? What worked or what didn't work last week? And then we're going to take a little bit of time just to review the thing they've been working on. So, hey, you worked on a pre-close. Like, how did that go? Let's role play quick. What did you notice at your estimate last week? How did your customers respond? Is it going good or do we need to keep working on it? And we really want to solidify their learnings. This is where you're building your credibility as a coach is you're giving them things and then they're going to go have success with it. And then you get that feedback loop where when you give your people something, they apply it and then they get results. They're more likely to take your next piece of coaching. So that's like the positive loop we want to install with our sales team is give them one thing, make sure they do it, make sure they see the results of it because that reinforces your coaching. All right. And then we basically want to plan next steps. So we're going to review the week quick, what worked, what didn't. And then we're going to just solidify their learning on the thing they're working on. And then it's like, what's next? And so we can look at the playbook to see like, what's the next SOP we're working on. I've got a whole process around like diagnosing sales issues that it's a series of questioning to find out like where we should focus. If you want that, you can email me about that too. I'm happy to send it over. It's just a free workbook. And then there's, maybe it's like, I don't know what we need to work on. Why don't I come and shadow you for a day and come watch a few estimates? And then the other thing is role playing. All right, so we're going to make sure we've got our development plan on like what are we working on next in the meeting, and then what's left of the meeting, we're going to role play and put the plan in the schedule. So then we've got shadowing. The way that you is you've got to watch them do 3 estimates. At the estimates, don't talk, just take notes. And then your job is to identify the one biggest thing for them to work on. All right, and that's going to be hard because you're going to have a ton of feedback. So from all the feedback, you're like, here's some things you did well. Here's some things you can improve on. Here's the one thing we're going to work on. So the point of shadowing is to know what are the things I'm going to be role playing and working on with them over the next couple of weeks. And just by going out and shadowing one day, you can usually figure out like what we've got to work on for the next 3 or 4 weeks. All right, so that's the point of shadowing, is go out, observe, make your notes, determine the development plan that you can then bring to the one-on-one meetings and role playing for the next month. And then the buy-in cycle for this, I'm just trying to jam as much in here as I can. I'll go through this quick, and then I'll take some questions. So basically, first, you got to identify and agitate the problem. So when I'm like watching someone and they built too much rapport, let's say, I go, hey, so notice that part when we were inside and the rapport kind of died off, but you like kept talking about their cat. And then the customer said, hey, so what do you got for me, John? Yeah, that's when they say that you built too much rapport. And then I need to go into detail on like why that doesn't work and what's it like as a sales, as a customer when someone's building too much rapport. Where have you been in a sales situation where someone was just like building rapport with you, but you're like, dude, I'm here to buy something. Like, why are you building rapport? Like, it feels salesy, it turns you off, you don't like it. I spend in training sales, I spend 90% of my time on making sure that the person I'm coaching understands the problem with what they're doing. And I want to keep beating that in until they go, oh, dude, that makes sense. And they actually have some regret because they can see all the estimates they could have booked that they didn't because they did that thing. And so I want to have that aha moment before I give them the answer on what to change, because the answer is always simple. Hey, practice this script. Stop doing that. Start doing this. The solution is easy. If the buy-in's there, they'll do the solution. If the buy-in's not there, they won't do the solution. So this is like the most important thing. And then also plan next steps to role play, practice, and solidify the learning. Role playing, we want to do it one thing at a time. You want to go really narrow. So if I'm role playing an initial call with people, it's like a 10-minute call. I want to identify the one place that they're weakest. And then I want to role play that little sentence over and over and over. Like, all right, say it again. Good job. Now change this tonality. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again. Okay, you got that part. Let's go to the next sentence. Say it, say it, say it, say it, say it. So we want to just practice repetition. The name of the game with getting really good at sales is literally just getting the reps in. How everybody gets good is reps. The question is, are you getting your reps in front of possible customers, or are you getting your reps, on the practice field? So get the reps in. And, there's a lot of things these guys can master. It's like just not just the words, but the tone, the pace, the body language when role playing. So to summarize all this, first, you've got to get real good at the thing that you're going to train. Then you've got to document the fundamentals so that you've got it like in its most distilled, simplistic form to duplicate your results without being a 200-page manual. 3, you've got to show them how it's done. You got to demonstrate it. You have to show them how it's done enough times that they know what they're aiming for. You have to show them success. And then you've got to develop people, and that never ends. Weekly meetings, infield shadowing, role playing over and over and over, one thing at a time. And you just got to get in the reps. So that's it. I'm going to stop there and take questions. Hope
Man,
it was useful.
yeah, Eric, that would I took a lot from that. I've got a lot of work to do myself, so thank you for sharing all that. The people can throw questions into the chat right now. The only thing that really mainly came up throughout was Bradley Ellison wants to have an argument about expected close rates.
I think they should be
Um,
higher.
uh, while there's just debate whether it's 55 to 65,
Oh,
70 to 75. I saw 35 in there, so
look, I don't. I mean, I'm not going to argue for it. If you want to set that as the standard, like by all means. I'd be curious what the thinking is there, Brad. Is it? I mean, we're not over here like screening estimates out. So it's not like we're cherry picking them. Like we're doing as many estimates as we can. And just what we found is like our average sales rates at Foothills and Elkhorn is 50%. That's company wide. And then our partners, I don't know, half a dozen partners who reliably close 70% of their estimates, like 65 to 70% of their estimates. And then our top sales reps are closing like 60%. And we're doing that at 55% gross margins, not even 50. So we typically are even higher price just because we feel like we have to be at 10 million a year. But I'm, you know,
No, that's helpful. I mean, I think that's the debate is, oh well, you're not charging enough. But if your gross margins are 55%, then you're doing something right. So,
yeah. Well, and it's like I wouldn't argue for it. I'd just say, hey, my proposal would be, what if what would it do to business if I could bump those up 10%? And I don't mean like 35% to 38.5%. I mean 35% to 45%. Like, what would it do to business? What impact would it make? Like, run the math, run the numbers. Like, what impact would that make for your sales reps, the money they're making, for the business itself and what you're making? How much will it drop marketing costs? Like, it's substantial. And so we like, even now, we're not satisfied. So we're not satisfied. Like, we're continuing to raise the bar where we're like, all right, how do we get, I mean, a year ago the average was like 47%. Year before that it was 46%. Year before that it was probably 44%. And so we're more like, how do we get that to 60? How do we get that average to 60? Because there's people who, we have more and more people doing that. And that's what I meant by, like, the biggest hurdle we've had in growing the company is past performance. So, there has to be someone who's going to trailblaze and set the bar for what's possible now. And once that one person does it, soon a second does it, and soon a third does it, and soon it becomes normal. And so a few years back, like, it was not normal for 50%. Like, you were kicking ass. Now it's kind of like almost company wide. It's like, you're under 50%, like something's off. Like, that's kind of the language now. It's like, I'm under 50%. What am I doing wrong? Like, I'm doing something wrong. So I just don't know why. I just think it's valuable to continue to strive to, like, raise the bar. And by the way, that's not just in sales. Same thing in project management. Like, we have all this competitive, we have a competitive team, and Gordon just had a record-breaking project management week. He produced $98,000 in residential projects and got tons of reviews and referrals and was perfect margins and did it on a 40-hour work week. And now people are like, how do I beat that? Right? So I think that's kind of the whole theme in my mission when it says discover what's possible. That's our mission at National Painting Group too, is discover what's possible and joyously make it happen. Like, you can always get better. Like, you can always get better. I've never been ever in any part of my life been like, nope, this is as good as it can get. There's always ways to get better.
mhm. Gage Copron here says, maybe you missed it, but what were the five key SOPs for your sales reps?
For us, it's the initial call. It's the pre-closes or trial closes. It's the needs, what we call the need satisfaction selling cycle. It's like the walk around. And then it's the Q&A, which happens before the walk around. And then it's the close. And then you could kind of say a sixth is, like, we do have a playbook and SOP for, like, how you build rapport. There are some things that you should do when you build rapport and some things you should not do. So you could say six.
Yeah. A couple more specific cases. Michael here, we're chasing 2 million this year, but don't give proposals on site. Close rate is currently 42%. How much higher do you think close rate could be by presenting on site?
10% higher. It'll go to 50.
Amazing. Perfect. We've got 1 minute left here. I just wanted to quickly mention that the next session, there's a 10-minute gap between, but you're going to go into your sessions tab on the left there. And for the business owner track, there's Chris Moore is speaking next, and then there's another session on the sales rep side. If there's more questions here, I think, Eric, it'd be okay. I think you left your email there in the slides. Obviously, there's a recording of this for them to double check it. Maybe we'll throw that in the chat. People can reach out.
Hit me up,
There we
PaintScout.
go.
I'll tell my assistant to respond with the slides, the master comp model, and the diagnosing sales issues thing for you. And then also, Jaden, does this room stay open? Can I hang out and answer questions for 10 more minutes, or no?
Let me see if I can extend it. We'll try.
All right, just for the
I'll hop
people.
out into the next one. But yeah, let's give that a shot.
Okay.
But either way, thank you so much for being here. Eric's completely volunteered his time to be here and clearly has a lot to share. So if you haven't already checked out all of the different ways you can get connected to Eric, definitely go and do that. Plenty to learn here. I'm learning fast. I'm sure all of you guys are as well. So thanks again, Eric. I'll try to keep this open for you. So I'll
Cool.
extend it another 10 minutes and see if we can make that happen.
Okay. Ben, you said, what do I say if a client asks if I use subcontractors? So my response to that is, Yeah, we do. Do you have like, why do you ask? Like, do you have any concerns or questions about that? And then they say their question or concern. And I say, got it. Yeah, I hear that a lot. So, I'll tell you a couple things. So one, it's not like I'm just finding the cheapest painter out there that can come and just do the project. All the guys that I work with, for example, Juan's been working with us for 8 years. Like he works with us almost exclusively. Like, so these are guys, like we vet them just as thoroughly as if we were hiring like our employee painters. So these are our guys. We've got a close relationship with them. We work closely. They know our expectations. They know how we work. And there's no one that's going to be working on your project that hasn't already done a bunch of projects for us. So what are the concerns that you have about it? And I just try to get down to like the concern, because usually it's a misconception. And once in a while, that's a deal breaker for someone, and that's fine, because even with a high sales rate, we're not closing 4 out of 10 estimates. All right, and then let's see. What did I say? Okay, so we got that one. Same. How do you train your reps to explain painting to coverage, or how many coats we apply? I don't even know. That's a little above my pay grade these days. I would I think Brennan, the way I would say, like, how do you explain it? That's the answer. I say, all right, Brennan, well, how do you explain coverage to a customer? All right, script that out, give it to your team. Yeah, just seeing your numbers, Brad. That's great. Just about your numbers. I mean, it's 5 million, 20% net. Awesome. 42%. Michael, yeah, you definitely can improve your close rate doing it on site. Absolutely recommend doing that. Yeah, Tyler, just I think you're joking, Tyler, but I mean, I didn't even have an office until we were doing like $3.5 million a year. I mean, we just like worked out of Starbucks. So, or my basement or Ben's basement. Not exactly professional, but saved us, whatever, 20 or $30,000 a year on an office. Orlando, it's not that it's presenting proposals on site. Is it really that effective? Yes. Yep. And it's more efficient. It's like you're already there. So here's how your sales process should look. Guys, go watch this video. If you let me just find this one for you real quick. I would go check this out, because this gives you an idea of like what the sales process looks like. So if you're doing estimates well, like you should be spending like 30 minutes with a customer on average, sometimes more, sometimes less, to figure out what you're going to quote for them. Like, what do they need? What do they want? What's important to them? And then after you figure that out, then you're doing the estimate itself. You're measuring everything and quoting it up and writing it up. And so you've already done all the work. Like, just walk back in the house and give it to them instead of going home and sending it to them. It creates like another task for you to do later when you leave, and then have to do it again. So, and then you have to come back. If they say yes, then you got to drive back to the house to get the yes. So not only are you going to sell more jobs when you just do it on the spot, but you're also going to save yourself time and your customers time. The only reason you'd send it later is if you're not really like meeting the customer. And if that's the case, then you're leaving a ton more on the table. Let me see what percentage to pay subs. We pay subs 50%. I mean, 45 to 50%, depending on the location. Like smaller companies, we're okay being a 50% paid to subs for labor material burden. So burden would be like workers' comp. So if they have their own workers' comp, we pay them 50. If they don't have their workers' comp and our policy needs to cover them, and we pay them 48. So that whole amount is 50. And then we have to get that a little lower over time as the company grows. So that's how we pay it out. And then I've got like a whole methodology for like how we get that right in the market, because you want to price yourself in a way where you can pay 50% to subs and you can attract and keep like the best subs. And so how do you do that? Because you can't just take them at their word, because a good subcontractor always asks for more money. And so it's not just, oh, they want more money. They said this isn't enough money, so therefore I need to pay more and I need to raise my price. You can't do that. You have to do a little bit of a bluffing game to test the market. So it's too much of a process for me to get into right now, but is 50% gross profit result of low overhead efficiency or price point? Well, gross profit doesn't take into account overhead. So gross profit is the profit left over after labor and materials, and then whatever, and then any insurance and workers' comp burden on the labor. So we're at 55% after we pay the subcontractor essentially. And then we've got all of our other overhead to make 20-ish% net. And then the way that we're doing that is we do have like better paint prices. So we don't need to pay ourselves as much because they're getting access to our paint prices. So that helps. But then we've also raised our price a little bit over time, just because we need to. As an owner operator, I'm the only one working in sales and looking to grow our team. This information was invaluable moving forward. Great, Joel. Thank you. Great, Rick. All right, guys, I got to hop on another webinar, but I hope it was valuable. If you guys want me to send you some of those materials, send it over. No, we don't put pricing on our website. Send over to eric@paintingbusinesspro.com. I'll have my assistant just respond with the materials I told you, like a master competency model framework or a master playbook framework, a sales diagnosing sales issues workbook, and what was the other thing? Oh, the slides from the talk. All right, so I'll get those. I'll get her prepped to send those things over. And then if you guys are interested in working with us at Painting Business Pro, just say so in the email and we can book a call with someone on our team. All right. Peace. Have an awesome day, everybody.